Today, we're going to unpack a universal and honestly, deeply maddening human experience. We are diving into the actual biological and psychological reasons why certain people just stay relentlessly stuck in our minds, way after they've exited our lives. Look, if you've ever had a crush, an ex, or even one of those vague almost relationships that just absolutely haunts your thoughts, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You replay every single text, you overanalyze every interaction, and you just wonder why your brain won't let it go. It honestly feels like you're under a spell. But I'm here to tell you right now, you aren't cursed, and you definitely aren't broken. You're just human. Your brain is doing exactly what it evolved to do, and today we're going to decode it. Here is our roadmap for today. 1. The biology of clicking. 2. The trap of limerence. 3. The Zeigarnik Effect explained. 4. Haunted by phantom exes. And 5. Breaking the emotional loop. Let's jump right in.
So, Section 1, the biology of clicking.
Let's look at the neurological architecture behind that magical feeling of instantly connecting with someone, because it's not just poetry, it's literal biology. It all starts in the emotional center of your brain, the limbic system. When we say we really click with someone, we're often experiencing what interpersonal neurobiology calls limbic resonance. Dr. Dan Siegel beautifully describes this as the sensation of feeling felt. It's this instant, nonverbal connection where two nervous systems are literally synchronizing. Your brain cells are reacting, creating this mutual state of empathy, trust, and shared vibration. It's incredibly powerful, and the crazy part is, it requires 0 words.
Think of human connection sort of like an iceberg. Only about 25% is above water. You know, the tangible things we can easily explain, like shared hobbies or physical attractiveness. But a massive 75% lies entirely underwater. This is the intangible, intuitive realm where limbic resonance operates. When someone gets permanently stuck in your mind, it's very often because your nervous system locked into this deep subconscious frequency with them.
Moving on to Section 2, the trap of limerence. So what happens when that initial spark mutates into an all-consuming obsession? Well, enter limerence. This term was actually coined by psychologist Dorothy Tenov back in the 1970s after she interviewed over 500 people. Limerence is this highly intrusive, involuntary mental state. It's that overwhelming feeling of being madly in love, but with a major catch. It is heavily fueled by uncertainty. The limerent mind isn't really searching for stable companionship, it's desperately searching for reciprocation.
Now, if you're listening to this and cringing because it hits a little too close to home, take a deep breath. Surveys suggest that anywhere between 50 and 60% of the population has experienced this agonizing state of limerence at some point in their lives. So it's a highly common, albeit completely illogical, human experience.
Let's break down the specific symptoms Tenov identified, because they're fascinating. When you're in this state, you get constant, intrusive thoughts about the person. Your entire mood depends completely on their actions. Did they text back? Did they look at you? You might even feel a literal physical ache in the center of your chest. And maybe the wildest part is something called crystallization. This is where you actually see their flaws, but your brain just twists them into something quirky and admirable, or just overlooks them entirely. Your brain is basically acting as if it's fighting a survival-level addiction, just living off tiny breadcrumbs of intermittent affection. So it's absolutely crucial to compare these two states side by side. Limerence thrives in the dark spaces of mixed signals and uncertainty. It's ultimately just a psychological drive to resolve that uncertainty. True love, on the other hand, that thrives on mutual reciprocation, certain stability, and a grounded acceptance of someone's actual, unidealized self. To put it simply, limerence is a question and love is an answer. Let's look at Section 3, the Zeigarnik Effect explained. Have you ever wondered why getting ghosted keeps your brain's browser tabs open forever? It all comes down to a cognitive glitch called the Zeigarnik Effect. Discovered by a Russian psychologist named Bluma Zeigarnik in the 1920s, this principle states a very simple truth. Human brains absolutely hate loose ends. We remember incomplete tasks way better than completed ones because an unfinished loop creates this nagging internal cognitive tension. Zeigarnik actually discovered this by observing waiters in a busy cafe, and the timeline of her experiment is so cool. At minute 1, a waiter could remember a highly complex, unpaid order with perfect accuracy. Minute 10, the food gets delivered. Minute 45, the customer finally pays the bill. And at minute 46, the waiter's memory of the order completely vanished, erased. The mind only released its obsessive grip the very moment the task achieved closure. So, when we apply this to romance, it makes total sense, right? Every unresolved conversation, every ghosting situation, or almost relationship just becomes the emotional equivalent of an unpaid bill. Your brain gets stuck in loading mode. You replay texts and invent alternate endings because your mind is tricking you into thinking you missed the person. But in reality, what your brain is desperately craving is just the closing of the loop.
Section 4. Haunted by Phantom Exes. Now let's see how this open loop builds into the creation of a phantom ex. This is a concept popularized in the pop psychology book Attached by Amir Levine and Rachel Heller, and it's a pattern particularly common for people with avoidant attachment styles. It describes a psychological defense mechanism where a person is seemingly haunted by a past lover. But here's the trick. They don't actually want that person back. Instead, they use this highly idealized memory of their ex as a shield. It creates an impossible standard to keep current real-life intimacy safely at bay. When we contrast the Phantom X with limerence, we see their engines are completely different. Limerence is fueled by the agonizing uncertainty of the present. You want closeness, but you don't know if you'll get it. The Phantom X, however, is fueled by the certainty of distance. Because the X is long gone, it's completely safe to long for them. It magically fulfills the avoidant person's need for intimacy without any of the terrifying risks of actual vulnerability. But how does the brain maintain this phantom? Well, it uses a bunch of psychological tricks. Take psychologist Daniel Kahneman's peak end rule, for instance. This rule proves we don't actually remember an experience in its entirety. Instead, we judge a past bond only by its most extreme emotional peaks and exactly how it ended. Add in some selective memory, where we scrub away all their annoying habits, and you get the avoidant paradox. You desperately want love, but you use a ghost to protect yourself from it. Finally, Section 5. Breaking the emotional loop. We've investigated all the usual suspects hacking your brain, so now let's talk about the exact prescription for breaking out of the psychological loop. First, take a breath and remember this fundamental truth. Your brain loops unresolved patterns, not random thoughts. Your obsession is a totally predictable biological function. So, by shifting your focus away from how special or unique that specific person was, and instead focusing on the underlying pattern at play, you instantly take your power back.
So how do we actually hack the Zeigarnik Effect and finally pay that emotional bill? Well, step 1, create your own closure. Stop waiting around for an apology you're never going to get. Write a letter you don't send to finalize the story in your own mind. Step 2, shift your mental narrative. Turn that confusion into insight by stopping the why did they leave loop and starting to ask, what did I learn? And step 3, practice closing new loops. Finish reading a book, complete a workout, finally call that friend back. You have to literally retrain your nervous system to understand that completion is safe and possible. Next, if you're dealing with limerence or a phantom ex, you really have to heal the underlying attachment. Step 1 here is to name the trauma bond. Recognize the unpredictable reinforcement loop and do it without an ounce of shame. Step 2, uncover the real need. Ask yourself what unmet need this phantom person actually represents for you. Are you just lonely? Or are you afraid of current intimacy? And step 3, build new neurological evidence. You overwrite an unpredictable attachment by slowly, deliberately accumulating small moments of safe, predictable connection with friends, loved ones, or a therapist. Now, I want to pause here for a second because this introspective question is just profound. If you really can't let someone go, I want you to ask yourself, who did they see me as? Often, if you really think about it, you'll realize that they saw you as someone confident, put together, worthy, and vibrant. And the hard truth is, you might not actually be missing them. You might just be missing that idealized version of yourself that you felt when you were in their presence. Which brings us to our final thought for today. It's not them you miss, but a neglected part of yourself you saw reflected in their eyes. Once you name that neglected part of yourself and take real action to embody it on your own, the ghost finally loses its power. The loop closes. You don't need them to be that person. You already are. So ask yourself, who are you waiting to become? And why do you think you need their permission to be it? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I hope this helps you reclaim your mind and your story. Catch you next time.